What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast. And my wonderful friend from Jersey, she's in Jersey. I thought we'd be in London with the tea topic, is Nicole Wilson. Hello, Nicole Wilson.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to get deep into tea because it's my favorite beverage. So we're going to talk about all that stuff. Guys, I'm going to read Nicole's quick little bio real quick. So Nicole Wilson is a tea writer and educator who shares her love of the leaf via her website. The website is teaformeplease.com. Her site covers everything from reviews of specialty teas and products to informative articles and event recaps. In 2018, Nicole won the World Tea Award for Best Tea Blog. Nicole also teaches classes on a variety of tea topics and speaks at industry conferences and tea festivals. Nicole is the author of the book, The Tea Recipe Book, which was released by Rockridge Press on May 17th, 2022. And I'm sure we're going to talk about the book, the contents, and how on earth Nicole Wilson became the world expert on tea. So welcome, Nicole.
Thank you.
I love your background. I love the backdrop, all the little tea kettles and teacups. I'm so excited to get in there. But because we're the What If You Could podcast, I do have to ask the What If You Could question. So, Nicole Wilson, what's your What If You Could?
I would say my what if you could is, what if you have something that you're extremely passionate about and you could find a way to, share that with other people and connect with other people. And tea has definitely been that for me.
Well, that's an easy one. That's a good one. You've already done it. You've done it. So, so you started back in 2008 with this tea journey. And you're probably about 30. So you started really young as a teetotaler, especially being in Jersey.
You're giving me credit. I'm
Um,
41, so quite 30.
a young 41. So what's with the tea? Walk us
Yeah.
through how you just go, I'm going to be the tea aficionado of the world.
So, it wasn't necessarily intentional from the start. I grew up always drinking tea with my mom, just, regular tea bags with milk and sugar. We were definitely a tea household. And when I was in college, I found a website that was hiring staff tea reviewers. So they, would send me lots of free tea and I would write about it. And so it was a really great early education. Normally it's kind of a more gradual discovery process for people, where I had like everything but the kitchen sink thrown at me all at once. When it came to tea. So it was a really cool way to just explore the world through tea, really. And I initially started teaformeplease.com. I didn't even have the .com at the time, but I started just like a free blog, on Blogger to back up the writing I was doing for them. And then eventually it kind of just took on a life of its own.
That's awesome. Now, I have been a tea aficionado for over 40 years. A friend of mine who liked a different kind of leaf back in the day. He was a big tea drinker. He was a vegan, and he was like really weird in the late 70s, early 80s. But got me into drinking tea, and I've literally drink a pot of tea every day for the last 45 years. I mean, I freaking love tea, but I got into it for the health reasons. But do you touch on the health reasons, or you're just about the yumminess of it?
Yeah, for me, I almost approach tea the way that like a wine sommelier might. That, yes, red wine they say is good for your heart, but it's not really why people drink it. And so for me, tea is definitely there's the sensory aspect of tea is really fascinating. And even just within tea, you can get so many different tastes and flavor profiles that it's really that part is really what interests me the most.
Yeah, I have a plethora of different tea bags laying around my house and up at the cabin, and I like to get cool jars to put the bags in and stuff. So now, do you look down on people like me who still use tea bags? Because are you a loose leafer, or are you accepting to all of us?
Yeah, so I would say I don't look down on tea bags. They definitely have a place. There's a tea for everyone. And so, there's definitely people who prefer tea bags and stick with them, and that's great. Because otherwise they wouldn't drink tea at all. But I'm definitely more of a loose leafer, so not above drinking a tea bag now and then, but loose leaf is definitely my preference, just because you really do get much more flavor, as well as control over the brewing process.
Yeah. Now, do you have a tea shop or tea restaurant? Because what's behind you? Is this actually in your house?
Yeah, so this is my office, as my husband calls it, the tea room. So it's basically just this is like my collection from all these years of, drinking tea and writing about it. You accumulate a lot of gadgets, gizmos, teacups, teapots.
That's awesome. I had a that I got when I was hanging out with my buddy Marty back in the early 80s. I got this coolest teapot with Asian with four little cups, teacups. And people thought they were sake cups because they were small, but they were, teacups. And and unfortunately, I'm down to like one of the little cups after 4 years. Somehow I've held on to one. But I mean, really, in a lot of the world, tea is like a traditional thing. I mean, it's like a process, and there's really something about drinking the tea, not like us slubs in America.
Yeah, absolutely. Tea is the most consumed beverage in the world, if you don't count water. So it's really definitely, so many different cultures around the world, enjoy tea and drink it in different ways. That's been one of my favorite parts of my tea journey is getting to learn about all of these different cultures through tea, that I might not have really have dug as deep, if tea didn't lead me there.
Yeah. I do the loose tea sometimes. I've got the little balls and I've got the whole little strainers. I've got all the stuff. I do loose tea sometimes. And it's a whole different flavor. I mean, the loose tea can be really robust and so much more flavorful than these wimpy little bags that we get. And I would imagine the health benefits a lot better for the loose tea, right? I mean, because it has more of the compounds and the EECGs and all that stuff.
So it definitely does depend on the tea. I would say with tea bags, you have to consider like that they're made for a very specific purpose. The tea leaves are typically cut into smaller pieces, so that they give you a stronger flavor more quickly. People are pretty impatient and they don't want to let tea sit for very long. So a tea bag is designed to be able to give color and flavor very quickly, so that you're not having to steep that for, 3 to 5 minutes, and like you would with a loose leaf tea most of the time. And so that's really the main difference, I would say with typically with loose leaf, there just is more diversity of choice, because there's so many different teas from all over the world, where tea bags are typically more restricted to almost like a general tea, where it'll just say black tea. But it might not tell you what type of black tea it is. Even just within that one category, there's actually thousands of different types of black tea. So there's definitely a lot more to explore once you start getting into loose leaf tea.
Yeah. Do they fake tea like they fake everything else? I mean, it's like, with spices and stuff, like you go to the store and if you go to Walmart and you buy a certain spice, it's definitely probably different than if you go to like a legit spice place, right? Are they doing that with tea now? Are we getting screwed over on tea?
Not now, but that definitely had been a practice, years ago. When tea first was brought outside of Asia, it was quite an expensive product, really reserved for the royalty. And so you had people in England were like mixing it with like leaves, sheep dung, all kinds of crazy things, to basically bulk it out and not, to be able to maximize their profits, I guess. At one point, green tea was being colored with dye to make it more green looking because people liked that at the time. And part of that practice is part of what actually led us to have the USDA. One of their first duties was controlling tea and making sure that the tea being brought into the US was pure and not adulterated.
That's very cool. I never knew that, especially since our FDA is so screwed up now and politicized and owned by the pharmaceutical industry. It's good that they actually served a purpose at one time in history.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. They had an entire department dedicated just to tea, and wasn't really like broken up until I think the Nixon administration. So.
That's very cool. That's awesome. Because, I mean, honestly, you could see how that could happen if tea's difficult to process or hard to ship and it's delicate and things like that. So people just start throwing crap in there because it's easier and cheaper. Then, yeah, that's not only good for our health, but we're being lied to. How far back have people been drinking tea? Who started drinking tea?
Yeah, so it originated in China. They're not exactly sure, but definitely thousands of years. They've found, fossil evidence of tea plants around ruins that they were doing archaeological digs on. So tea and people have really been, tea is a very old agricultural product. I would say comparable to like say wine or a lot of grains. Had been cultivated in China for quite a long time. And then just kind of gradually spread across the rest of the world from there.
Yeah, I would imagine. Do they drink tea in India as much as they do in China? Is India a big tea
They
place?
do. Yeah, I would say in India, definitely chai is one of the main teas that they, are very prevalent there. So it's like black tea with milk and spices. But in India, there's several different regions that grow tea. Tea cultivation had been brought there by the British actually, because they basically decided that they didn't want to keep giving their money to China to buy tea. So they smuggled some plants out and planted them in Darjeeling. So it was kind of a bit of agricultural espionage that, is why we have tea growing in India today.
That's kind of where I was gonna go. Was like I went to India because I'm thinking, England basically owned India, and
Hmm.
all of a sudden England's chugging down all this tea. So I was trying to figure out who was first, the chicken or the egg. Did India have the tea and then Britain went over there and stole it? So Britain actually brought the tea to India.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's a little bit of both, actually. They didn't know that tea was already growing in India because it was a different variety. And so they did all of that without even realizing that they already had tea in India in the first place. But there's a really fascinating book called For All the Tea in China, by Sarah Rose, and she basically wrote it as like a historical fiction account of this botanist, Robert Fortune, who was sent undercover in China to smuggle out tea plants.
That is so awesome. I love espionage, especially when it has to do with stuff like that you
Yeah,
don't think about.
it's kind of
It's
crazy to think
like,
about because he was like a large Scottish man that I'm like, how did he go in China and no one knew, like, thought that this was weird?
dude, you're a horrible spy, man. Seriously, you don't
Yeah,
fit in at all, bro. You just do
exactly.
not fit in. Yeah, we need to bring a little Chinese guy to do that stuff. I think that's great. And tea throughout history has had such significance. I mean, you think of the Boston Tea Party for America, right? We just got pissed off and threw it all into the bay because of the tea tax. But I
Yeah,
mean, throughout history, I mean, tea really has different points in history that meant something.
absolutely. Yeah, tea is really woven throughout human history. When Britain, did the reason we had the Opium Wars was because Britain didn't want to keep giving China their money. So instead, they were trying to trade opium. And so a lot of people in China, there was like an epidemic of opium addiction. And China decided that they didn't want to keep buying the opium because it was really bad for their society. And the reason the opium wars happened was because of that situation. So it's really super fascinating. Early in American history, a lot of people don't realize we were a tea drinking country before the Boston Tea Party. Our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Ben Franklin, they all drank tea, quite a lot of it actually. And so because they were kind of the richer people here, they were able to afford importing these big chests of tea where, a lot of your, common people might not have had the ability to do that.
Yeah, and when you think about the how the shenanigans were going on, the financial, the political aspects of it, and it really is still just the power structure like today. I mean, it's like China's just going to send a bunch of fentanyl here to America because they just don't, they want to weaken our country,
Yeah,
and just like
we're
they did with the opium back then. What a trip!
I know we're probably heading towards something like that. I just paid a 63% tariff to get a box of tea from Japan the other day. So
Wow, from
yeah.
Japan?
Mhm.
I thought we were going to go even with Japan, but I guess not. Who
Yeah, I
who
guess
knows
not.
what's going
Yeah.
on with all that
DHL was
stuff?
like, you better pay this or we're not giving you your package. So
God, it's crazy time. It's crazy time. So it's interesting about the British though, because when you think about the biggest tea drinkers in the world, you always think of the British. It's tea time is everything. But I mean, gosh, the Chinese and the Japanese. I mean, the Japanese. I mean, tea is like a religion over there in Japan.
yeah, absolutely. I actually just got back from a trip to Kyoto, where I studied tea for 2 weeks. And so it was really amazing that just everywhere you went, every restaurant gave you a free cup of tea. Every vending machine was full of unsweetened green tea, which is really like unheard of here. So I was definitely in my glory.
Yeah, I love tea, and I won't drink bottled tea. It's there's one brand that's supposed to be really good, and the name is escaping me now, but it's supposed to be just water and tea, and supposed to be okay and stuff like that. But I'm just like, I just can't get behind it. It just can't possibly be the same, because there is a process to it. I mean, I make mine every day. I look at my shelf and I decide what bags I'm going to use, and I always pick 5 bags. Sometimes the same 5 bags. Sometimes I'll mix them up. Just depends on what mood I'm in. Um, and then I put the water and I go through the thing. But I'm probably breaking rules because I let my tea bag sit there forever. I mean, I just don't yank them out. Am I breaking the rules on that deal?
I would say not necessarily breaking rules because taste is very subjective and that may be how you enjoy it. And if you're the one drinking it, that's all that matters is if you like it. But typically tea does have kind of like a recommended steeping time. So depending on what tea and how you're making it, that might be anywhere from like 1 minute to maybe 5 minutes. But it really does vary based on the tea itself. But tea bags typically do give their flavor pretty quickly. So you don't necessarily need to let it sit for a long time. But if that's how you like it, that's okay too.
It gets stronger throughout the day, I think, as it sits there. And I drink mostly green tea, so I'm a green tea guy. And I know this is temperature, right? Like my wife bought me or maybe her daughter gave me a used one or whatever, an electric water heater like they have, in Europe. You see them all over Europe. We don't see them a lot in America. We have our teapots, right? And that sucker heats up water like instantly. It's crazy. But it probably gets too hot, doesn't there? I mean, isn't there
Yeah,
like a temperature that's
absolutely.
too hot for tea?
So the hot water extracts basically all of the components that are in tea. But with green tea, especially, things like the antioxidants that we might drink for health benefits actually taste pretty bitter. And so if you're using water that's too hot, you're going to over extract those components. So a lot of people tell me they don't like green tea because it's bitter. But if you make it with lower temperature water, it actually won't be bitter. So it really can change the taste quite a bit. So I always encourage people to kind of experiment and play around and try different temperatures so that they can see if there's a sweet spot where they think the tea tastes the best.
See, I cheat. I'm a cheater. I just am. I'm a cheater. I have an old coffee maker, and I pour the water in the top, and then I put my bags in the in the coffee carafe, and then the water comes in, and then makes my tea, and I like the temperature of it. So I cheat. But when I'm at the cabin, I put it in that quickie thingy, that quickie hot water thing, but I monitor it. I always catch it before it boils. Like I'm looking through that little blue window, right? So I try to catch it before it really gets too boil and then pour it over. Cause I don't want to hurt my tea. I love get bitter. It's not that I don't want, but I don't want to hurt my tea. I want all the goodness from it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think of it almost kind of like if you're, if you're cooking veggies, you don't want to overcook them because especially if it's like spinach or other vegetables like that, they really don't taste very good if you overcook them, right? So same thing with green tea. You just want to make sure you're not overcooking it.
Yeah, I love my green tea. And I used to do a lot of loose leaf teas, and I love the smell of the loose leaf tea. And I would throw the processed tea or the boiled tea out in the garden and just let it kind of soak into the ground. And I love that. The chickens would always peck at it because they liked it too. But what's the what's the most popular tea in the world?
Well, I would say the most popular is probably green tea. I would, outside of the US here, and especially in Asia, green tea is probably the most prevalent tea. There's definitely, so many different types of tea, but green tea is, I think, the most consumed. But black tea is also out there.
'Cause I think the Asian community drinks the green tea and like the British drink the black tea, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of why, Britain and a lot of Western countries drink black tea more, is that it's more shelf stable. So, way back when we were first importing tea, it was very slow by boats. It would take months and months to get the tea from China to England. And so green tea, unfortunately, does have a shorter shelf life. And so it really just wasn't stable enough for that long shipping. So, but black tea was. And so that was partly why I think they were exposed to that first and was kind of like the taste they associated with tea, because they just didn't know what other options there were at first.
Huh. I love all the history of it, not just the yumminess of it and the health benefits. I just love all the history of it. So, who grows the most tea? Where does the most tea come from?
Yeah, the most tea is definitely China. China is definitely one of the biggest producers. It's just, firstly, a very large country, and a lot of it, it's grown throughout the country. So there's just a lot of geography dedicated to tea there. I would say definitely India, Sri Lanka, and like Kenya are some of the largest ones after that.
Yeah. It's labor intensive too, isn't it? Because you can't really use machines to go pick the leaves, can you?
Well, you can. So that part's interesting. In a lot of places, tea is hand-picked. Like in India, especially, that's kind of the standard there. But in Japan, they're very efficient in everything they do. And so they've developed a lot of ways to harvest the tea without necessarily needing labor to do it. So they have, when I went to Japan, we were able to visit some tea farms and harvest tea. And one of the ways we did was it's kind of like a hedge trimmer with a bag attached to it. And so they just graze over the top of the hedges because you really only want the top parts of the leaves. And then the bag collects those leaves so that you could process them afterwards. They even have these kind of like ride-on tractors that do the same thing where they go over the tea bushes. So they keep them kind of pruned and trimmed to a certain height to make that as, efficient as possible. But there's definitely, a lot of places where tea is still harvested by hand as well.
Yeah, China has a lot more workers than Japan does by,
Yeah, Japan,
a
there's kind of
billion.
shortage. There's even like a shortage of tea farmers actually, because a lot of the younger generation don't want to take over. They don't. They want to go to like Tokyo and have a tech job. They're not wanting to stay in like a countryside farm, anymore. And so there's the average age of a Japanese tea farmer is about 70. So it's kind of an issue that they're trying to figure out solutions for now, because the farmer population is definitely rapidly aging.
God, what a trip. You think of how many thousands of years they've been drinking tea in Japan, and now all of a sudden it could it could come to an end. I mean, unless they really figure out the first of all, they don't have any land. It's a little tiny island. And second of all, if you don't have the laborers, if you don't have, well, that'd be a trip if all of a sudden there's just no tea grown in Japan anymore. That
Well,
would suck for them.
they're in an interesting point in time right now, because there's a huge craze in the worldwide for matcha, which is a powdered green tea from Japan. And so they're struggling with there's this huge craze for this product that's so essentially Japanese, but they just don't have the infrastructure to produce as much as is being demanded of them, because of those issues that were already existing with, the lack of labor and farmers.
Does maca only come from Japan?
Yeah, so matcha is a green tea from Japan. So it basically the leaves are shaded before harvesting, which to block out the sunlight, and it makes the taste sweeter, and also the increases some of the health benefits like the ECGC. And then after the leaves are destemmed and deveined, and then they're ground into a powder, and then that's whisked into water instead of steeped like tea leaves would be.
Well, I put it in my shake every morning. I have it, the powder, and I drop a scoop in my in my shake every morning. But I didn't realize it only that's why it's so damn expensive, I guess, because there's not a lot of it.
I mean, a lot of work goes
Interesting.
into it. And even, just the process of grinding the leaves. One machine can only make about 40 grams of tea in an hour. And so it's really takes quite a lot of time and effort just to make a small amount of matcha. So it definitely can be quite expensive because of that.
Holy cow. Wow. Yeah. Well, now I'm going to be a lot more gentle with my maca. I have a lot more respect for it. I didn't realize that. That's a trip. Do 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 tea plants flower like
They
other
do,
plants?
yeah. So the tea plant is called Camellia sinensis, and it's in the camellia family. So just like camellias that's people might grow in their garden, it has these delicate white flowers with like a pretty yellow center. It just happens to be one of the few camellias with leaves that taste good. So a lot of the other species, you could theoretically kind of process the leaves, but it really wouldn't taste the way that the tea that we make tea from does.
So the petals, you're saying that the flower petals don't have the same thing as
No,
tea
so
leaves.
there's hundreds of different species of camellias. It's just like a family of flowering plants. And so you can actually brew the flowers though. They kind of have just like a light honey taste to it. In particular, there's a farm in Sri Lanka that puts them in with a black tea. That's really lovely.
Interesting. Interesting. Do we in the US of A, do we grow tea here?
We do. So yeah, there's a few places. Hawaii is definitely one of them since it has a kind of, subtropical climate, which is, what tea prefers. But there's actually a pretty large grower in Mississippi. There's also a few in like Louisiana, California, Oregon. There's a place in Michigan that grows it in a warehouse since the winters there are pretty cold, in like a greenhouse, I
That's
mean.
crazy. Yeah. I could just see all those Birkenstock tie-dye t-shirt wearing Oregonians growing tea, man. I could just see all those hippies growing tea. I love you Oregonians. I'm just messing with you, know that. Um, well, that's cool. I mean, because you think of tea and you think of Asia, you don't think of it really growing anywhere else because it's just such a product of that continent, that country. And I mean, I can't imagine they could grow tea in England.
Well, there actually is a few pe places in the UK. There's actually quite a few growers in Scotland now. I think there's also someone in Wales. So it's interesting that tea is kind of spread a bit further now. I think global warming might have part to do with it that, the weather is not as cold maybe as it used to be. But it's definitely interesting to see how, this plant can adapt to so many different environments.
I love it. I I do drink coffee also. I happen to love coffee quite a bit, and I like to go in old school coffee shops. I'm not a Starbucks guy or one of these other places, but I like old school, especially I love a library that has a coffee shop in it. That's like my favorite thing. Um but when I got cancer and my son said, "Dad, you got to go get CBD because you need the gummies because you don't have an appetite and you need it for pain and stuff like that." So I did. And I walk into this really fancy pot store and they've got a bud tender. It was like a bartender put a bud tender, and he's said, "What do you need it for?" And what are you looking for? But I did, and he got me just the perfect stuff to help with the chemotherapy and stuff. Um, and I know they have tea places like that too, where you can walk in, they just have shelves, of the jars of tea and stuff like that. Those are really cool. I like those.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite tea places in New York, I know you mentioned old school. In New York City, there's a store called McNulty's that's kind of like a time machine when you walk in. There's everything is in these glass jars and they measure your tea on this like old brass scale and then they like rubber stamp your bag. It's just very, old-timey and nostalgic, definitely.
I love it because that's what tea's about. I mean, tea's about the whole process of it, right? You get out your teapot and you get out your tea and you put it in the thing and you brew the water and then you seep it and then you sit and you enjoy it. It's not like, we do put it in a cup and take it in the car, but I mean, it's not as likely that you take a big old 32-ounce jug of tea and drink it on the way to work. Tea's more of like an enjoyable sit down with your proper tea and and drink your tea, right?
Absolutely. It's part of why people love tea, I think, is it's really like a ritual when you're making it.
Yeah. But now you kind of a little sacrilegious. I mean, you put milk and sugar in it?
Well, I mean, it depends on what it is, like if I'm making a latte, every once in a while, you can indulge. For most tea, I won't, just because it will cover up the taste of the tea itself.
Yeah. There is an occasion, like now I'm fighting a little weird head thing. There's an occasion where I'll put some lemon in my tea. Um, but I love the flavor of the tea. I like the taste of the tea. My wife gets these bubbly water thingies that say they have a flavor to them. They just taste like water, bubbled water,
Yeah.
right? She goes, "No, that one's like cranberry," and I'm like, "Oh, bullshit! It's just water, man." But people think the same way about tea, right? I'm like, "Ooh, I bought this kind or that." They'll go, "Dude, it just tastes like tea." I'm like, "No, you're not getting the essence of." You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
there are so
absolutely.
many flavors of tea, right?
Definitely. I do get a lot of people will tell me that they don't like tea because it's weak. But often I'm like, that might be user error rather than a problem with tea itself. A lot of people will have these big mugs, and they'll use one single tea bag for a big mug. And so you're not going to have a full flavor if you do that, where it should be about one tea bag or a teaspoon of loose leaf for every cup of water that you're using. And so the bigger your cup, the more tea you're going to need to use. But a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, my coffee carafe thingy that I make my tea in every morning is a small one. It's only a 6 cup. It's not one of those 12 cups. But you're guaranteed that I'm going to put 6 or 7 tea bags in that puppy,
Ooh.
and it's gonna be yummy. And I just love all the different types of tea. Now you're inspiring me to go back to loose leaf, and it's because it's not like I don't have the time in the morning. I'm real early that I can make the loose leaf. So, where's a trusted source to go buy our loose leaf tea?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's definitely a lot of options. I would say a great place to start is if you do have a local tea store, especially if you don't know what you like yet or what you enjoy, they can definitely be your guide, kind of like, the guy you saw at the marijuana store that, they can tell you what each tea tastes like. They might ask like what flavors you enjoy so that they can figure out what would be the best recommendation for you. There's definitely a lot of good places online too. So I tend to really like companies that specialize in a particular type of tea. Is not that somebody who's a generalist won't be good, but if you want Japanese tea, I'd like to go to somebody who specializes in Japanese tea because they're really going to know their stuff. And so that's usually kind of my best guide. On my website, I've written, over 1,000 tea reviews, so that's definitely a good place to start. That if you're looking for a recommendation of a certain type of tea, there's definitely a lot there.
I want to go to that place in New York. I want to pick a jar and have them weigh it in front of me and stamp it.
Yeah.
I'm going to fly to New York just to buy tea from
Yeah,
that
no,
place.
definitely. They're great. And they're in the village, so it's a great area to just like walk around to.
Yeah, because it's the whole experience of it. It's the whole experience that I love so much. But I do love drinking tea. Like I said, it's got to be over 45 years I've been drinking this stuff. So tell me, what is the World Tea Award? I didn't know there was a World Tea Award. Now
Yeah,
you won it
so
for best tea blog. Is there other categories in the World Tea Awards?
Yeah, so they actually I think unfortunately have stopped the awards now. But I won in 2018. But World Tea Expo is kind of like the big industry trade show in the US here. So it's kind of like a B2B show where, all the different tea companies will have their booths so that if you have a tea store or a shop, you can walk around and like see what's new, place your orders, that kind of thing. But they had these awards where there were all different categories for, different best tea retailer, best tea book. There were just a ton of different categories. And so they had basically a voting process where people could nominate, people, certain companies or people for the awards. And then, eventually they had the semifinals. And then I was lucky enough to win the award for best blog.
That's so awesome. It's so cool to be the best in the world at something, even if it's just for 2018, right? It's like, dude, for that year I was the best in the world. Not everyone can say that for anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's very cool. That's great. So, but once the internet just kept getting bigger and bigger, do you still do the blog, or is it mostly everything's just focused on the website?
Yeah, I still do the blog. So Monday was actually my anniversary. So it's been 17 years since I started the blog. So yeah, so quite a long time.
17 years?
Hmm.
God, I guess, yeah, 2008. Duh, I guess that would be 17 years. Holy crap.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and
It's been interesting in that time, a lot of blogs have stopped or like switched more to social media, because that's kind of the way the internet has gone, I think. But I definitely still have a soft spot for long form content. So I still really love just like writing a really, in-depth blog post.
do you have a Facebook page?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm on most social media. Yeah.
Just check it. So, and the truth of the matter is, we have your mom to blame for all this, don't we?
Yeah, every once in a while I'm like, this is your fault, right?
She's like, honey, I just thought we were going to have tea. I didn't know you were going to do this. This is crazy. So, is your mom still around?
Yeah, absolutely. And she still drinks quite a lot of tea. Just she sticks with her tea bag. She doesn't, venture much farther than that. But she's definitely very supportive of what I do, which is nice to have.
That's awesome because that is a cute story how you kind of having tea with your mom and then ended up going down the tea rabbit hole. And I guess what, you went off to college and were like, I'm going to keep doing this tea thing.
Yeah, yeah. I really just didn't even expect for it to turn into what it has. But it's been a really cool journey.
How fun. How many countries have you gone to go drink tea?
So my trip to Japan was really my first outside of North America. I haven't really traveled that extensively, but I did go to Canada. There's a really wonderful tea festival in Toronto. So I was able to go up there and I gave a presentation on cooking with tea, which was fun.
What do you think? What do you think that? annual amount of money is spent on tea? You have any idea how much the world spends on tea?
Yeah, it's about I mean, in the US, I think it's about 2 billion a year on tea, which includes all different kinds of teas. So that's where it's hard to know exactly, what portion of the pie everything is. But it's definitely, and it's been year over year, tea has grown. So it's been really fun to see just in my 17 years being involved in tea, the changes that have happened, in consumer habits and, what people are interested in.
When you come home from going to one of these things, do you have to hide the tea cup that you bought from your husband so that he doesn't go, "Sheesh, you bought another freaking tea cup"?
Yes, every once in a while, he's like, "Really? You needed that?" But we each have our own hobbies and interests, and he's very supportive of what I do too. So, he might roll his eyes, but he also, very much supports me and everything. We did he's not really a tea person at all. But we did a fun YouTube series where we called it Husband Tea Torture. So it was on YouTube where I would make him drink these different teas to get his reaction. It was really fun.
That is so cool. That reminds me, my son uh, had me watch I don't remember what it is, but I guess some dude has a celebrity there and they interview or they talk to him, but during the interview, they eat like chicken wings. And like the first
Oh,
one's like,
yeah, yeah,
"Have
that
you
one.
seen that?" And then like it gets to the last one is freaking flaming hot and like they can't. What is that called? Do you even know it?
Yeah, it's called Hot Ones. Yeah, that's a really fun show.
So I think you and your husband have to do that with tea now. You just need to get different celebrities to come to your studio and you'll
Right.
serve them different teas while you interview them. Not hot. I mean, you don't have to do what that guy does, which is kill his guests.
Yeah.
But I think we got a new gig for you guys for sure. I've got a friend who's a ridiculous golf addict, right? He seriously needs help. Luckily, he's rich, so he can afford it. But same thing, he'll come home and he's like, his wife will like check him down, check the car, like you better not have another putter.
Oh, definitely. I know when I unpacked my suitcases from Japan, he was like, "Really?"
I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. I mean, this might be a lame question because, like, asking people which one of their children is their favorite kid. But do you have a favorite tea? Is there one that you just go, "Oh, I just love this freaking tea"?
Yeah, that's a really tough one for me because I really do love all tea. I'll usually cheat and say oolong, just because it's the most diverse category. So oolong can be anywhere from maybe, tea is a lot of the categorization is by how oxidized the leaves are. And so oolong is one of the broadest categories where it can go from maybe 15 or 20% oxidation to almost fully oxidized. So you can really get such a range of different tastes within that one category that's always kind of my like out on that question is I'll say oolong, but I don't think I could choose a specific one.
Yeah, I just love them all. I just love them all, and I I love when I go to a place and they have a different new one. I'm like, ooh, I'll try that one. But I get them for all sorts of stuff. When my throat was healing from the surgery and stuff, I was doing a lot of throat coat. I was doing a lot of teas for the throat. Yeah, I'm feeling a little weird in the chest. I'll do one, for that. I'll drink ginger tea if I got a little upset stomach or peppermint tea, and I just, it's such a wonderful medicinal product along with just being yummy,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
what's the thing? Because I said it wrong, but you said it right. I said ECCG, but it's ECGC. What's the
Yeah.
compound in it that makes it healthy?
So it's basically an antioxidant. So, our bodies are always oxidizing. It's just a natural process of basically cells dying, really. And the antioxidants help slow that process. So it is just very, very healthy for our bodies. There's a lot of different compounds in tea. One of the main reasons I think people really enjoy tea is it contains an amino acid called L-theanine, which actually relaxes our central nervous system. So even though tea contains caffeine, the L-theanine is kind of more balancing and makes that more gradual, where coffee, you kind of get that instant rush and then you crash after the caffeine wears off. But tea is much more of like a gradual wakefulness. And so L-theanine is part of that, why that happens. But I definitely think that's part of why, our humans have evolved to really have tea as part of our diet because it is so advantageous.
Yeah. And you just brought up something that I I wasn't going to ask, but now you made me think about it. I am anti decaffeinated tea. Like my wife will drink decaffeinated tea, and I said no because it changes the tea. Is that true? Do I have to go to apologize to her?
No, yeah, I definitely agree. So tea naturally contains caffeine, and especially if you're drinking at night, it probably maybe isn't the best thing for you if you want to get some sleep. But to decaffeinate the tea, they basically brew it with supercritical carbon dioxide, um, to remove the caffeine, but there is some taste and other components that are lost with that process. It's not a perfect, just removing the caffeine. You're kind of like dumping out the baby with the bathwater in a way. So a lot of decaf teas, if you look at the ingredients, they actually add tea extract back into it to try to make up for some of that taste that's lost. And so I would say if you're drinking at night, something like an herbal infusion, is a better choice because there isn't caffeine. But there's still definitely lots of options. I know a lot of people really like chamomile when they're going to bed, because some people do find that it acts as a bit of a sleep aid. But peppermint, tulsi, there's tons of herbs to choose from. So you don't necessarily have to go with a decaf tea if you want something that doesn't have caffeine.
I agree 100%. Now I'm glad I don't have to go apologize. I just think anytime you alter anything, right, from the natural way it is, it's gonna screw it up somehow. And there's all sorts of teas that you could drink. Like I drink Sleepy Time with the little bear on the cover. But I don't drink tea at night, but I sometimes do at the cabin. If I do, I'll drink an herbal tea, like mostly a chamomile. But yeah, good. I don't like decaffeinated tea, so I'm glad you said that.
Or
The
another
other
good option is there's a Japanese green tea that's roasted called hojicha. And because it's roasted, it's also primarily made out of stems instead of the leaves. It's really quite low in caffeine. So I mean, in Japan they give it to babies. So it's really very, very low. So for a lot of people, that's a good choice for nighttime when you do want tea, but you don't want something that's going to keep you up all night.
Ooh, I'll keep that in mind. I'll go see if I can dig that up. Maybe they got it at Whole Foods. I don't know. I'll go looking for that tea. And then, back to the health aspect of it too. I mean, from what I've read, and I may be wrong because I'm certainly no doctor, um, is, there's very little skin cancer in like Japan, even though they're outside a lot, because of the compounds in a lot of the green tea, but also for your arteries. It's very good for softening your arteries and plaque and stuff, right? I mean, isn't there really actual good medical reasons to drink tea?
Absolutely. There's been quite a few studies done, mostly on green tea. But tea is definitely very, very healthy for your heart. It's good for digestion. It's good for just a lot of different parts of our body. So I always say, I know a lot of times tea is promoted as like a weight loss magic cure. And I would say like you have to kind of take things with a grain of salt. Where, I was like, if I drink so much tea that I would just disappear if it made you lose weight that much. But it definitely is part of a healthy diet that if you're drinking tea instead of like Pepsi or something with a lot of sugar in it, it's definitely going to be much healthier for you and can lead to weight loss without really being, necessarily like a magic cure the way sometimes it's promoted to be.
I'll have the triple cheeseburger and an order of animal fries and an iced tea because
Yeah,
I've heard
nice.
that it's and now it doesn't work that way, bro. Um, well, that's great. Well, you're awesome. This is fun. I love tea. I love the process of tea. I love everything about tea. When we would go to London, I always loved the proper way to have tea, not like a schlub like me who would go in there, but I just loved a proper tea. And we would go into these stupid clubs and we'd get like a cucumber sandwich or we'd get some weird finger sandwich, right, with tea at 5 o'clock. And they would do the whole tray and they'd pour the tea and they'd do the thing and you'd have the finger, the usually cucumber sandwich, which seems weird, or pimento sandwich, stuff like that. And it was the whole process of it, with a little tea cracker or something like that. And we just loved it. And it's just like, yeah, that was $150 for 4 cups of tea.
It can be, but afternoon tea is definitely fun. Tea is really great to pair with other things, and so afternoon tea is a great way to kind of play around with that and try different flavor combinations.
Yeah, I just love the whole thing of it. But yeah, I literally make a pot of tea every single day for I can't remember unless I'm traveling somewhere where I literally can't get it, but I can't remember the last time I didn't make a big pot of tea for myself every day. Now I do have my coffee in the early morning, but I have the tea afterwards and I just love it and it's just so much to it. So gosh, Nick, you've been awesome. I couldn't stump you no matter what. You just are the queen of tea. You're the tea guru. You're awesome. Now, I usually end the podcast. I ask my guests one last question because I always lie. I told them I had one question, but I have two. Such a freaking liar. Um, but I'm going to ask you in a different way. I usually ask my guests, hey, if you have a real thought or heartwarming this or whatever. But I'm going to kind of ask you in a different way. So, Nicole Wilson, if what is it about tea that you just love so dang much? And why should we all be drinking more tea?
Yeah, I would say for me, for me, it represents connection. My journey with tea has brought me to, become friends with people all across the world that I would never have even met if I didn't love tea as much as I do. I mentioned before, it's the most consumed beverage, second only to water. It's done in so many different ways by so many different cultures that I see it as kind of like tying us all together. And so for me, that's, when I drink tea, I'm connected to the people who made it. I'm connected to, the journey that tea has gone on to get to that point. So, I really feel every cup I have, I always feel like try to have an appreciation for that. And it really, is very grounding and inspiring and definitely keeps me, wanting to keep drinking tea.
I love it. I love it. That is so wonderful. Everybody, we've just had the joy of spending some time with Nicole Wilson. She's a writer, tea writer, and educator. She's the winner of the World Tea Award for Best Tea Blog. We have the book, The Tea Recipe Book, which is out, and you could find that all over the place. And of course, the website with the blog and all the goodies is teaformeplease.com. Teaformeplease.com. Nick, you've been awesome. What else do you have going on? What else should we look for from Nicole Wilson before we hasta luego?
Well, yeah, so I'm definitely working on some projects. I'm hoping to launch an online tea course. That's kind of just like an introduction to tea, to make it, easy for people to learn just from home if they don't have access to somewhere that they can go learn. And I'm also in the process of starting on my second book too. So that'll definitely be a big undertaking, but excited for it.
I love it. I love it. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you here. It just makes me have more appreciation for tea. Now I'm even going to expand my tea horizons, going to go back to some of the loose leaf and just enjoy it more because it's really an amazing beverage. It really, really is. We're blessed to have it, just like we're blessed to
Absolutely.
have you, Nicole Wilson.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining me, kid. I really enjoyed this. This was really fun.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
You got it. All right, guys. You guys look for Nicole Wilson. Don't forget, it is T for me, please. brew.com. You'll be glad you did. Drink more tea. Thanks, guys. I'll see ya.
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.